about kind of literature about VET, but my title mentioned the word development, so it's about time that I came back to it. Now, again, in development, there's been a neoliberal orthodoxy, what was called the Washington Consensus. But actually, that's been under question. Well, it's been under question throughout. So there's a lot of literature against structural adjustment, for instance, in the 1980s. But really, from the early 90s, there's been a series of intellectual projects fighting back and talking back to it. And partly it's been about other major structures from the United Nations and from international organisations offering different ways of viewing the world. So, of course, from the UN, human rights has always been at the heart of how the UN understands itself, back from the Charter in 1948. But what the Millennium Development Goals do, in my argument, is put a human rights perspective at the heart of a thinking about development. Now, that thinking isn't very strong about jobs, work, economic development, industrial development, but it's very strong about basic rights to health and education. And so that agenda came up to question a lot of this, that there's a right to these things. It doesn't matter what the economic results are, but as it happened, the research proved, and that definitely in inverted commas, that if you invested a little bit in girls' education, you got returns in terms of productivity and reduced fertility, etc., etc. So it was also instrumental. The second strand, and we're 20 years on from Rio a few weeks ago, was to say sustainable development clearly had to be at the heart of this. Economic development was taking us to disaster. And so we've had the growth of an agenda around sustainability. And so the latest thing that's come out there is we should replace the Millennium Development Goals with a set of sustainable development goals. It's not quite clear what these are, but that's kind of last month's great idea in development that's still being played out. And you'll be glad to know that David Cameron is one of the lead people in sorting this out for us. So there's been an agenda that sustainability needs to be thought about, and of course that's led to an argument that sustainability isn't just about the environment. It's got to be about economic sustainability and social sustainability. So a three-pronged approach. I think in practice there has been work about vocational education training and this, but it tends to be about green skills. And so there's a very simple